Hello everyone, I'm Asadullah Khan Wazir. I hope you all are doing great. As you all know that we are living in turbulent times where anarchy has not merely loomed but has already returned. And the great powers competition is intensifying with each passing day. And today's landscape is marked by relentless wars in Gaza and Ukraine, and also by Israel and India's mounting belligerence in their respective regions. Amidst all challenges, we have multilateral and minilateral institutions like the UN, SCO, and Quad, which stands alongside long-established security arrangements like NATO. But these institutions have failed to address the global security challenges. Where, on the other hand, we have the example of China, which has given its own security framework called Global Security Initiative. So the question is, what is this Global Security Initiative, and how can China's vision of a global security framework, the Global Security Initiative, can help to address these global security dilemmas? So to discuss all this, I am joined by Mr. Zhipeng Zhang from Fudan University. Mr. Zhang, thank you so much for your time. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Mr. Wazir. Like always, I'm very happy to have this opportunity, to exchange ideas with you on the Global Security Initiative. Like you had just mentioned, it's an urgent problem that needs attention worldwide.
I'm also honored to have you again. So let's start our discussion by understanding what is the Global Security Initiative is. What are its core principles and how the Global Security Initiative evolved since its initial proposal in 2022?
Right. That's, I guess, is the central question here. There was this conceptual file to elaborate on the principles, the core principles and the objectives of this initiative, GSI. I recall at least the six core principles here. Now, the first and the most important principle, I guess, is to uphold, to adhere to the common, comprehensive, cooperative, and also sustainable security. So what China is trying to propose is to reject the zero-sum mentality, the zero-sum game approach, advocated by the Western powers, by insisting that security should be something shared by all the nations concerned, and security should be multidimensional. That is, we incorporate the attention to the traditional and non-traditional security alike, addressing military, economic, environmental, and also the governance-related security through partnership, not division and confrontation. And I guess this GSI can also be linked to other initiatives proposed by China, like the Global Development Initiative. That is, one of the parts of the first core principle of the GSI is we should tackle the root causes like the economic underdevelopment and inequality that tend to breed security concerns. So that is the first and I guess the most important principle. And the second principle is to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all nations. I will not go into the details for this principle. And the third principle is also important, I guess. That is, we have to continue to respect and uphold the established world security institutions like the UN. So China is saying that we should respect the UN Charter and position the UN, not the military power blocks, as the sole legitimate arbiter of international security dilemmas or concerns. So we should oppose unilateral sanctions or the so-called coalitions of the willing. And when we talk about the world security, we should take into consideration the security concerns of all nations. So this is also one of the core principles of the GSI, to balance security concerns. All nations, all countries' legitimate security needs should be respected. And so this contrasts with, for example, NATO's approach, which is the expansionist approach and often disregarding for other nations' interests. And very important principle, one of the very important principles of GSI is that we should resolve the security concerns through peaceful resolutions. That is, dialogue should be used and treated as the most effective conflict resolution tool. And we should reject the regime change, or especially we should reject the militarized solutions. And last but not least, like I have mentioned already, we take this holistic approach to security challenges according to the GSI. We integrate traditional and non-traditional security challenges. And so this is, again, different from the West's obsessive focus on military threats. Here, the pandemics, the climate change, the digital threats, possible threats from the AI are also taken into consideration. So these, I think, are the 6 core principles of the GSI. And speaking of the objectives of GSI, we can make a long list of this, but here I would like to draw your attention to follow them. And the first objective, like I said, is to root out, to eradicate the systematic, the fundamental causes of security concerns, of conflicts. For example, we should tackle development gaps. We should remove unilateral coercions rather than just respond reactively to symptoms, to the phenomena at the superficial level. I would say this actually aligns with the Marxist critique of imperialism's exploitative structures, which tend to breed insecurity worldwide. The second objective is to overhaul the exclusionist mechanisms to tackle world security concerns dominated by Western powers. And we need to ensure that all nations, especially those underdeveloped or the developing states in Global South, have an equal say in shaping security frameworks and norms. Also, we should try to institutionalize sustainable peace. So we achieve peace for a time being, but also we should build this structure to make sure that peace is sustained. That is, we transit from the reactive crisis management to enduring peace through development security synergies. That is, we can actually view or approach the GSI together with GDI, the Global Development Initiative, which is also proposed by China. I guess these are the core principles and most important objectives of the GSI. But of course, this is only part of the entire framework. But these are the core ideas, I guess, if you want to have an initial understanding of the GSI.
Mr. Zhang, as you already talked about how it differs from traditional security initiatives, but if you could elaborate on it, how it differs from traditional security initiatives like NATO, Quad, Five Fives, and others, and as these countries also emphasize on collective approach to neutralize global threat to defend their sovereignty. So how the global security initiative is different from those traditional security initiatives?
Right, good question. I think the global security initiative is fundamentally different from the traditional security frameworks like those by NATO or the Quad, because the global security as something collective, as a collective good, rather than as something to compete for, rather than as a competitive advantage, but an advantage only enjoyed by a very few of developed and capitalist countries. So the GSI directly challenges NATO and the Quad's exclusionist logic. The Western framework operates through most of the time through military blocs that inherently create and breed security dilemmas. We can link this to the Marxist idea that capitalism has this reputation or this tendency to externalize the internal contradictions, especially when the economy is declining. and that would lead to global security concerns, often for other countries. So the GSI, by contrast, tries to address the root causes, like I have just said, to eradicate problems like underdevelopment, inequality, and, of course, imperialist interference. I can give you a number here. It is estimated that NATO's total defense spending expenditure, that is, reached about 1.1 trillion US dollars 2 years ago in 2023. And you can only imagine, it's actually easy to understand how this expenditure would only perpetuate the profitability of militarization, because we all know that, for example, in the US, there is this military, industry, and finance complex. So the military solutions for global security actually has been made into a kind of business. But the GSI's mediation in, for example, in South Sudan or the Saudi-Iran reconciliation demonstrates how you can resolve these security concerns by removing the material conflicts. And by doing that, you can achieve sustainable peace. Crucially, GSI is not taking the West civilizational hierarchy model embedded in the NATO's narrative. The NATO's narrative is that either you are with us or you're against us. Either you're a democracy or you're autocracy. But this is binary mentality. But the GSI draws from China's traditional wisdom, diplomatic wisdom, that is, harmony without uniformity. We're different, but we can coexist. To build inclusive platforms, diplomatic platforms, that is. So this is not just policy divergence. It is, what we see here is actually a philosophical difference, philosophical clash, you might say, between zero-sum capitalist security models and a socialist humanist vision based on the political wisdom of traditional Chinese culture.
Mr. Zhang, as you have meticulously discussed the conceptual foundation of a global security initiative, but as you know, we are living in an anarchic world where states' interests matter more. So my question is, what concrete mechanism and platforms are being used or developed to operationalize the global security initiative? And if you please provide some examples of successful GSI-led initiative and or collaborations to resolve global disputes.
Yeah. To put the GSI into practice, China is doing a lot of work, and I would say effective work. So China is moving beyond theory, turning the GSI from an idea into something concrete. A primary approach is to work through established international bodies. Like I said, the GSI strongly supports the UN and the UN Charter's central role in global security affairs. And this involves constructive participation in UN Security Council discussions on key issues. And of course, China is doing a lot to contribute to peacekeeping missions in regions like South Sudan and Lebanon. But then beyond the UN, China is also doing something else under the GSI framework. The GSI is being operationalized through a lot of interconnected dialogue platforms that are designed to build consensus between different parties. For example, we know there are high-level forums like the Beijing Xiangshan Forum, the Middle East Security Forum, and China-Africa Peace and Security Forum. These forums serve as key venues and important opportunities for officials and experts from different parties to different countries to exchange ideas and deepen policy communication and understanding. The initiative has also seen success, concrete success, tangible success in direct dispute resolution. A landmark example, I would say, is the China broker dialogue that led to the historic reconciliation between Saudi and Iran, which is highlighted as a successful practice of the GSI. Another example is that China facilitated the Beijing Declaration on ending the division and strengthening Palestinian national unity. So this declaration helped to unite, I guess, at least 14 Palestinian factions to strengthen internal unity. And this, no doubt, is a critical step towards the Palestinian-led solutions for the security concerns of the local region. Now, in addition, I can also think of the example of how China helped to host the talks between different factions, different parts of northern Myanmar, and helping them to reach a formal ceasefire agreement. So these are all the concrete examples where you can see that the GSI-led initiatives or collaborations can actually, in fact, help to resolve disputes or address security challenges.
Mr. Zhang, if I summarize your argument, it reflects that you're talking about China's philosophy of peaceful coexistence, but the Western world says that it is impracticable. The China's initiative or philosophy of peaceful coexistence is impractical in this anarchic world. So, but when we studies China's history, we can see that there is a strong element of inclusivity and peacefulness in China's tradition. So, how does the global security initiative translate these ancient values into modern conflict resolution?
You have put it very well to talk about, the ancient Chinese values like inclusivity and peacefulness. The GSI, I think, actually embodies these cultural DNAs, so to speak, of the Chinese civilization, of the Chinese nation, especially inclusivity and peacefulness. So the GSI is transforming these kinds of ancient Chinese wisdom into modern conflict resolutions. The Western skeptics see the peaceful coexistence as impractical, to borrow your word, but the GSI proves it is practical. It is possible and very possible. Just as, for example, in ancient China, the Buddhist, Confucian, and Taoist synthesis synergy created a richer Chinese civilization. So the GSI's mediation in Saudi Iran's reconciliation is also turning the foes into, if not friends, at least partners through dialogue, not through force. So this mirrors China's historical approach. The approach, actually, I've been talking about several times, that is the harmony through integration, not through exclusion, and harmony in diversity, not in uniformity. But then the West misreads these ancient political wisdom because the misreading stems from a civilizational blind spot. Yeah, that's a good match. Western civilization, at least the modern Western civilization, is based on the atomic or the atomized individualism. I think we talked about this in a previous interview, right? The atomic individual. And the modern Western civilization believes in or is structured upon the rigid, a lot of rigid metaphysical binaries. There's the binary between winning or losing, the binary between prevents the Western people from grasping the relational security, the concept of relational security, which arguably is the GSI's core innovation. So unlike the NATO's us versus them logic, the GSI thinks of security as interdependent, as relational. So this mirrors, for example, the African philosophy of Ubuntu. About this concept, Ubuntu is the idea that I exist, I am, because we are. So I exist because we exist, and that we includes you. So I exist because you exist, basically. But then if you think about the modern metaphysics of the Western civilization, think about the philosopher Descartes. René Descartes has this famous remark that I think, therefore I am. So I am, I exist because I think. But then in this remark, there's no we, right? There is no group. There's no collective. But then Ubuntu philosophy is I am because we are. And this is very similar to traditional Chinese wisdom. For example, even in traditional Chinese medicine, there's this holistic balance of different parts of the body. So one part of the body functions well because the other parts of the body are present and are functioning. So when China hosts peace talks, like the talks between different factions in northern Myanmar or the factions in the Palestinian factions, China applies the idea of harmony without uniformity, allowing the differences to coexist. We are different, but we exist. We coexist because I exist, because we are, because we exist. So we are interdependent. And this idea, the Western binary in mediation, I have mentioned some examples before, just shows that lasting peace requires cultural exchange, mutual learning, and inclusivity.
Okay.
So this is a lesson from China's history.
Okay, so Mr. Zhang,
then the West does not seem to. Yeah.
Mr. Zhang, let's bring the Iran-Israel war into the discussion, where the world was on the catastrophic expanding regional war, but thanks God it didn't happen. So my question is, how did the Global Security Initiative played its role in addressing the Iran-Israel war? And if you shed some light on how the JCI can play its role in addressing the conflicts of such nature.
Right. This is a question that needs urgent attention from all the countries worldwide. So China's GSI offers the Middle East an alternative. First, this is at the conceptual level, an alternative to the cycle of the violence that is going on in this region by reminding all parties that conflicts like Iran-Israel or the conflicts in Gaza region can only be solved through dialogue, not through the bombs or the military blocks or confrontations. And personally, I would say the root cause of this kind of conflict that we see in this region is not so much the ancient hatred between different groups of people as decades of unfair Western imperialist policies. Because we can, if you think about this, the arms sales, fueling the wars, the political meddling, dividing societies, and the economic coercion and to breed insecurity and continuous again and again. So now we can see the US is actually stepping back, to the American first policy. But then the GSI is, like I said, offering an alternative. The GSI steps up as an honest broker. China is an honest broker here. China proved this in 2023 by helping to broker the Saudi-Iran reconciliation. These two countries are former foes, but now they are exchanging ambassadors, not missiles. And we can actually also think about the conflicts in Gaza. Here, China pushes for an immediate ceasefire and a two-state solution tied, again, to development, economic development aid, not through empty promises. So this is not just crisis management. It's building. China here is proposing to build a new security architecture where all the states, Palestine, Israel, Iran, can have equal voice and dignity. And that's how the GSI can help to turn itself, from an idea into reality. That is, it replaces the gunboats with round tables and replaces domination with justice. But then the GSI insisted that conflict should be resolved through dialogue alone, never through violence. And again, under the GSI framework, China has actively worked to alleviate the local crisis through mediation and aid. As a neutral mediator, China facilitated, as I mentioned, the Beijing Declaration, uniting 14 Palestinian factions. And regarding the humanitarian aid, China has delivered multiple minimum batches of supplies, including food and medicine, for example, vaccines. For example, China will cooperate with I believe the name is Jordan Hashemite Charity Organization, to provide food packages to 60,000 families in Gaza. So the Western powers focused on military aid, but China focuses on actual, tangible humanitarian aid. And China pushes for ceasefire agreements at the UN and development-based peace.
So, Mr. Zhang, as we have seen in the recent conflicts, the issue of cybersecurity, misinformation, and even humanitarian aid, the most pressing issue of the current era. So, how does the Global Security Initiative focus on non-traditional security threats?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring this issue up. Non-traditional security threats, I would say, is one of the highlights or the characteristics of the GSI. In tackling non-traditional security threats, we can think of many examples between China and some states. For example, we know there's this Lantang Meigong Cooperation Framework, which has become an experimental zone for the GSI. This framework is a cooperation mechanism between states, including China and Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, and yes, of course, Vietnam. So under this framework, these countries are advancing security cooperation in different fields, but non-traditional threat fields. I recall there's this action called the Ping'an Lantang Meigong action, and in which China works with Thailand, Myanmar, and Laos to combat cross-border crimes, such as the cross-border telecom fraud. So this is a kind of a non-traditional threat to the local security. By doing this, these countries are working together to address crimes that impact public safety. In the realm of cybersecurity and information security, China has put forward the global initiative on data security in 2020. I guess this was even before the GSI was proposed, promoting the establishment of global digital governance. And China continues to implement other initiatives like the initiative between China and Arab states. I think the name is China League of Arabs Cooperation Initiative on Data Security, which was put forward like 4 or 5 years ago. So China is working with developing countries to play a greater role in digital governance. And I research into the AI and AI governance a lot. And on AI governance, in October 2023, President Xi Jinping proposed the Global AI Governance Initiative. So in this initiative, we can see China's approach to AI governance. That is, we should focus on development. Again, this is the keyword, development and security and governance. In July 2024, last year, in Shanghai, there was this Shanghai Declaration. That is, it was released during the 2024 World Artificial Intelligence Conference, and a high-level meeting on AI governance worldwide. So the Shanghai Declaration on the Global AI Governance basically called on governments, all the governments, the scientific community, the industrial leaders, and other stakeholders to work together to promote the healthy development of AI and safeguard AI security. I can also give you some examples about how the GSI has helped to tackle non-security threats in public health realm and in the realm of providing humanitarian aid in conflict zones. But then I've given some examples about the humanitarian aid thing. And also, I'd like to say something about food security. Food security is also a kind of a non-traditional security issue, but often it is neglected or not. It's playing a very important role in promoting sustainable food security and agricultural security. For example, in Africa, China is helping the African countries to build agricultural infrastructure, is dispatching experts, scientists to the African countries, is providing food supplies and agricultural supplies, and is helping to train the local personnel. In fact, I think China has become the largest developing country contributing to food security worldwide by providing the most financial aid, providing or dispatching the most experts, and implementing the most projects.
Okay. Mr. Zhang, as we are running short of time, so my last question from you is that keeping in mind the anarchic international order, do you see any hope for true multilateralism in the current international order?
The West, again, the Western skeptics would say the answer is negative, right? But I'm hopeful. I have hope in this. The Western skeptics would say the answer is no, but I am positive here. The current US-led order is collapsing under its own contradictions. So the capitalist countries, they have this hunger for profit. But this hunger has turned multilateralism into a tool for powerful states, to exploit, economically speaking, to exploit the weaker states, to fueling the inequality, the conflict and climate issues, etc. Now, the US is taking this American first policy because, well, maybe this is my personal opinion, because the US is too divided by its internal crisis to lead, yet the country is too addicted to hegemony to share management, to share governance power with other countries. So the system cannot even maintain the illusion of global cooperation again. What remains here, what's left is not true multilateralism, but a zero-sum game, a zero-sum scrambling game. And in this game, the Western countries weaponize institutions like the IMF, to punish, dissenter, to exploit on the weaker, on the developing countries. But again, the GSI offers an exit or an alternative. It replaces this predatory model with something that is defined by sharing, by coexistence, and by mutual respect. Fragmentation is not the end. I think it's the birth pangs of a fairer world. And one last point, I think it's worth mentioning that a true multipolar world is not necessarily a fragmented world. So multipolarity is different from fragmentation. Multipolarity, when it's done properly, emphasizes fairness, emphasizes shared governance, and emphasizes an inclusive order advocated by the GSI. So the multipolarity advocated by China centers on the UN and opposes any form of divisive dynamics.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zhang. Thank you so much. It was such an insightful discussion with you.